And so early on in my career, I would get frustrated with them because I couldn't get them to do what I wanted them to do. The problem was that when I was feeling this frustration, I could only see the surface level of the problem. And the surface level of the problem was that they've dug their heels in against me. They've crossed their arms. They're being stubborn. And it was very difficult to get them to move forward. So what I discovered was that you have to dig beneath the surface, not just looking at the behaviors, but understanding, how do I build relationship? How do I build relational equity in such a way that I could get them to move forward so that we could accomplish this mutual vision or this mutual goal? Building trust is one of the most important skill sets that a leader has to have in order to move people from being dead set against you to moving with you and moving for you to accomplish your mission and vision. Now, that's actually like the definition of what a leader is. A leader is a person who gets people to work together to accomplish a common goal. But how do you do that if people are dead set against you? If people have dug in their heels or crossed their arms or don't feel like they actually want to engage with you and work with you? Now, I had that situation when I was working as a teacher early on in my career in education, where I had at-risk students who were going through all kinds of challenges, and a lot of those challenges I was not familiar with. Many of the students that I was working with were homeless, or who had parents who were addicted to drugs, or who didn't know where their next meal was coming from. And so early on in my career, I would get frustrated with them because I couldn't get them to do what I wanted them to do. The problem was that when I was feeling this frustration, I could only see the surface level of the problem. And the surface level of the problem was that they've dug their heels in against me. They've crossed their arms. They're being stubborn. And it was very difficult to get them to move forward. So what I discovered was that you have to dig beneath the surface, not just looking at the behaviors, but understanding, how do I build relationship? How do I build relational equity in such a way that I could get them to move forward so that we could accomplish this mutual vision or this mutual goal? And that's what this video is about today. How do you build relational equity with people to get them to work together to accomplish a mutual goal? So what I call this is relational equity. And there's 4 steps to relational equity that a leader needs to think through to be able to take someone who's dead set against you and get them to want to take action with you. The first piece of relational equity that I want you to be aware of is what I like to call time in the game. Time in the game is simply this. There are some people who just won't trust you until they see that you can be consistent both emotionally and relationally over time. That you can show up and show up and show up and have that unconditional positive regard. And that if you're consistent and you do what you say you're going to do and you behave the way you're calling everyone else to behave, if you're consistent with that over time, they're going to give you their trust. Now, these are the easiest ones because if you have people who need time in the game, all you have to do is just do you. You be consistent. You show up. You give the effort. And if you continue to do that, you'll earn their trust. The second level of relational equity that I want you to consider is that there's some people who just need the time in the game, but there's other people who need mutual risk. They need to feel like they're on a journey with you. And on that journey, you don't know what's coming next, but they want to feel like we're experiencing mutual risk together. Meaning there's moments when you have to learn and there's moments when I have to learn. Essentially what it is with mutual risk is they want to see you under pressure and they want to see that you can continue to treat them with respect and kindness and value while at the same time not losing your composure. This is what makes you trustworthy. And so often what you'll find is that people who need mutual risk to be able to trust you, they need to see you try and fail and get up again and still be be consistent with your behavior and consistent with your values and consistent with your goals. And if they see this, that's when they will cross that bridge to begin to share in that trust with you that you can do something with. The third level of relational equity that some people need, obviously we know that there's some people who just won't trust you without time in the game. They need to see that you're going to be consistent and have that unconditional positive regard. The second is mutual risk. People who need to have, like, you go on an experience together and they need to see you fail and try and get up and do it again, but they feel like they're in it with you. The third is this difficult one, and it's to engage in conflict. Now, the challenge with conflict is that oftentimes we engage in conflict and it's me versus you. You didn't do this or you didn't do that. And that type of conflict always creates toxic culture. But that's not the kind of conflict that I'm talking about. The kind of conflict that I'm talking about is me and you versus the problem. And often what happens is the deepest kind of conflict is the most important conflict that will earn that trust with someone who's dead set against you. And it's the conflict where you call someone into their potential. Let's say you have an employee who's working for you, and what happens is, you know, because you've seen when they're with the residents or the people that they're serving, that their capacity is here. But then when they get in the context of the team or in a team meeting, they show up and their attitude is down here. So the conflict I'm talking about is the conflict when you help them close the gap from how they treat the residents to how they treat their coworkers. That gap right there is when you call them into their potential. That is conflict for them. And there's some people who simply will not trust you until you expose that gap. And that gap of conflict is the place where they go, wow, Aaron really sees me. He sees the potential that I have, and he's holding me accountable to it. There's some people who won't trust you until you can find that gap and highlight it for them. Now, the last phase of building relational equity, there's time in the game, there's mutual risk, there's conflict where you call people into their potential. The last step of mutual risk is what I like to call leveraging strengths. Now, there are some people that are out there, and when you catch these people, by the way, they're like unicorns. You don't get these people very often. But there are some people who simply won't trust you until they see that you see what's great about them, and you leverage your power to give them a chance to show off their skill, their talent, or ability. Oftentimes, these are the leaders, the natural leaders, who are kind of like wild Mustangs. If you don't give them a job, they'll create a problem for you. They're like a dog that you bring home, and that dog might have some bad manners. And if you don't give that dog a job, if you don't give them a ball to chase, if you don't give them something to do, they'll eat your couch. Right? And so there's some leaders that are like this. They're destructive until they have a mission. And there's certain leaders that need you to leverage their strengths so they can have a mission. And if you give them a mission, all of a sudden, all of the negative behaviors go by the wayside because they believe that you see and believe the best in them. And they notice when you stand on this end of the scale, when you use your weight, your power, your authority to give them a chance to show off their skills. And that's when they choose to trust you. So as I wrap up this little talk about relational equity and these 4 steps, time in the game, mutual risk, engaging in conflict, and leveraging strengths, what I want you to know is that everyone has a mix of kind of all of these. There are some people that might really value that time in the game, but there's going to come a point when you've got to leverage their strengths. And there's some people who you might leverage their strengths early, but they really need some mutual risk to be confident in it. And there's some people who you're going to have to engage in conflict with them, but then they're also going to need to see that you're consistently having unconditional positive regard for them, like what you get with time in the game. So all of these interplay with each other, but it's really fun to look at your team, and I challenge you to do this. Look at your team and ask yourself, what do the people on my team need from me? Do they need time in the game? Do they need some mutual risk? Do they need me to engage them in conflict and go, hey, I see this gap and you have the potential to close it. Now let's help you get there. Or do they need you to leverage a strength and go, you have this skill set that no one else can do it like you do? And so I want to give you a chance to put that on display, because the moment you do that, pow, now you've got relational equity that you can do something with. Hey, it's Aaron here. One last thought. If you happen to be one of the amazing leaders who've actually stayed all the way to the end of this video, I just want to offer this up to you. I am committed to helping leaders and teams grow and win. And if you watched this video or heard my talk in a seminar or workshop that I shared, and you want help, I'm giving you my personal phone number right here and right now. That's how committed I am to seeing you grow. So this is actually my personal phone number. And if you text it and say, hey, Aaron, and give me the context of where you heard me or saw me, I will respond to you. That's how committed I am to seeing you build teams that win and get on the path towards catching the silver tsunami. So give me a call, shoot me a text. I'd love to hear from you.